Okay, here's where we start. I want you to think of a thing in your house or life that doesn't work quite right anymore, but you figured out how to use anyway with just a little bit of adjustment. I give you as an example a garden gate that had to be rebuilt that doesn't quite latch correctly. Maybe a dishwasher that pops open mid-cycle. Sometimes these quirky household objects get fixed, but other times, like, say at my house, the whole household just adjusts to the quirk. We just get used to it, so we all have to learn together how to jiggle the handle, or we train ourselves to double check the latch, and that's how it goes. Is it like that at your house? We often stop noticing these small tweaks that we make for things we deal with every day. The adjustments we make become automatic. Okay, I have a great example from my earlier life, but it's quirky and it's decades old, so please bear with me, young people. This is when they're about to start hearing the Jurassic Park theme in their heads, because this is an example from the before era, the before times. I used to have a VCR. Looked like that. It would play movies called VHS tapes. This VCR would spit the tape out. The first time you'd press it in, it would immediately reject the tape. But the second time you'd press it in, it would just play the tape. So I developed this habit of pushing the VCR or VHS tape into the machine and then freezing my hand in front of the machine. This was just like a labor-saving move, right? Because if it's gonna pop out, my hand's just right there to push it back in. Then, as you would imagine, we upgraded the machine to a DVD player. And for months afterwards, I would put a disc into the DVD player, press close, and then hold my hand right there, like I was channeling the force to keep the DVD player closed. And I never needed to play the part of Jedi in training just to keep the new DVD player closed. It was just a muscle memory that I developed. I kept the habit even after the machine got upgraded. Here's a more recent example that still plagues me. I used to listen to music on the platform Spotify, but I had the free version. Okay, I have since upgraded to the paid premium, just so we're clear. But I listened to free for too long, and here's how I know. I developed a little adjustment there too. With the free version, you can play any playlist, but it's automatically going to be set to shuffle, and you are not in control of the order the songs are played. And if you think you're just going to skip a song you don't want right here, consequence-free, well, you are not going to skip that song consequence-free. They are going to play you an ad every time you press skip before the next song plays. That's why you upgrade to paid, which I did. But then, for a long while, every time I'd listen to a playlist and I'd want to hit skip, I would start to do it and then freeze. Like, I have to give myself permission to do the thing I have paid to do because my brain said, we don't want an ad. Those are so annoying. Okay, what does this have to do with anything? What does this have to do with anything, especially the Sunday after Easter? Well, I believe it's just true. We all make adjustments in our lives that were needed at some point in time and are not needed now. And this works on a much larger scale than a small appliance or a small inconvenience. We've all learned to live in less than ideal conditions in order just to exist with whatever broken thing, system, person, dynamic is in front of us. But here's the thing, friends, what's in front of us changes. Life doesn't stay the same. And some of the biggest changes we're going to encounter can be for good if we can stop doing it the way that we always have done it and change ourselves accordingly. Just like me and the movie and the music players, changing our built-in reactions is often the hardest part of adjusting to a new life. You might think that just knowing things are better now would be enough to release us from whatever feeling or action we got used to holding on to. But not really. That's just not how people work. A whole lot of the time, we human beings need to actively unlearn what we no longer need. I did not feed Shelby Dean any lines for that prayer, but she said a beautiful thing. She said, the habits that we form in hardship do not serve us in freedom. It's 100% true. It's true, especially when we're coming out of a stretch of bad days or a really hard thing. And this, I think, is the story of resurrection for all of Jesus's friends. This is what it was like for them. They'd been existing under threat for years. They've been very reasonably afraid for Jesus, for themselves. And then their fears seem to be reinforced when Jesus is put to death by the state. And now, just because Jesus is back, suddenly they have not forgotten how they felt for so long. Even if their senses tell them everything is different now, their bones and their cells, their bodies hold an older muscle memory. The challenge for Jesus' disciples and for us and for the church universal is to remember everything is different now. The habits we formed in hardship are not necessary in freedom. We can change ourselves accordingly. That's what I think John's gospel is telling us in chapter 20. Any good thing that is also different than anything we've ever known is now possible because we are in resurrection season. New life abounds. Our job is to see it and believe in it. Today's message really is John's message. I just got us there with the best examples I could think of. And now it's up to me to give you more John. I'd like to start with the very last verse of John chapter 20, and we're going to work backwards a bit. The risen Jesus did many other miraculous signs in his disciples' presence that aren't recorded in this scroll. But these things are written so that you will believe that Jesus Christ, God's Son, that Jesus is the Christ, God's Son, and that believing you will have life in his name. It's a pretty pivotal line. It's the why of the whole gospel. It's also the purpose of every resurrection story. What Jesus did and what was recorded about him is meant to move people to either continue to believe or come to believe, as the words just said. It's actually the one belief statement we recite in the Disciples of Christ denomination. By the way, that's all we say. Do you believe Jesus is the Christ, the Son of the living God, and accept him as Lord and Savior? And this is how we get to those words of belief. We read it right here in this gospel. But we should probably make a note that we are reading in English something that's a little bit incomplete. In the original Greek, the word for believe includes the idea of trust. The text really should say, trusting in and relying on Jesus as the Christ, the Son of God, because that's what John was trying to say. And it's important enough to note because English kind of lets us down. Belief doesn't really say enough. Believe, for us, is a word we affiliate with our cognition, having to do with what our brains think. We don't tend to pack the idea of trust into the idea of belief because trust is a relational word. It has to do with what we feel around people. You can see how that works when you talk in English about the parts of the body associated with these two words. We believe with our heads and trust with our hearts, largely because in English we think of those as two totally different things. But of course, how we feel influences our thoughts and actions. And John knows we're going to need both head and heart to take in this big new thing, the risen Lord. Otherwise, this new life in front of us, well, it won't change anything on the inside of us. If we're not using all we have to bring, nothing will change accordingly. Maybe that's why John's resurrection account stretches after Easter morning, days after Mark's account, by the way. Maybe it's to show us what heart and head coming together look like as disciples actually try to come to terms with resurrection. I want to pick up the reading again, and the only thing you need to know right now is that at this point, the male disciples have heard from Mary Magdalene. They know that Jesus is alive. And so we start John chapter 20, verse 19. It was still the first day of the week. That evening, while the disciples were behind closed doors because they were afraid of the Jewish authorities, Jesus came and stood among them. He said, "Peace be with you." After he said this, he showed them his hands and his side. When the disciples saw the Lord, they were filled with joy. Jesus said to them again, "Peace be with you. As the Father sent me, so I am sending you." Then he breathed on them and said, "Receive the Holy Spirit. If you forgive anyone's sins, they are forgiven. If you don't forgive them, they aren't forgiven. They are retained," says the NRSV. Thomas, the one called Didymus, one of the 12, wasn't with those disciples when Jesus came. The other disciples told him, "We've seen the Lord." But Thomas replied, "Unless I see the nail marks in his hands, put my finger in the wounds left by the nails, and put my hand into his side, I won't believe." After 8 days, the disciples were again in a house, and Thomas was with them. Even though the doors were locked, Jesus entered and stood among them. He said again, "Peace be with you." Then he said to Thomas, "Put your finger here, look at my hands, put your hand into my side." No more disbelief, Thomas, believe. Thomas responded to Jesus, "My Lord and my God." Okay, that was more than a week's worth of events in a short amount of time, a lot to take in quickly. So just a few points that stand out to me. The disciples are very deep in the mixed emotions of change when we find them. They have every reason to be hopeful, but they're also hiding out. They have locked themselves up. No one else did it. They are anxious and they're uncertain, and their bodies are probably under constant stress. So the first thing they need from Jesus, reappearing right in front of them through locked and solid doors, is peace. They lack the kind of specific peace that Jesus brings. A quietness of soul, a kind of rest in any circumstance, a sense of belonging, of wholeness and oneness, no matter what else is going on. Jesus offers this to them the same way Jesus does today. Because I say we mostly need the very same things those disciples needed. When big change rocks our worlds and we want to be excited about it, but we're just not sure. We get anxious, we get uncertain, we breathe and eat and sleep in stress because we don't know yet how it's all going to play out. We still tend to hole up and protect ourselves in the face of a big thing. But Jesus needed more from his friends than their own self-protection. So Jesus starts with their peace. Jesus offers them peace of mind. He basks in their joy for a bit, and then he brings them further along, further into the picture of just what new life can look like. As the Father has sent me, he says, so I am sending you. If you forgive anyone's sins, they are forgiven. If you don't forgive them, they aren't forgiven. And those lines have really confused and upset me over time. I have seriously wondered, what is Jesus talking about? Is it really our place and our job as Jesus followers to judge the other people? And then I read a different explanation that made so much sense. I will offer it to you. Jesus is not giving his disciples some special power to decide whose sins are forgiven and whose aren't. He's showing them what won't happen if they stay behind the locked door. If they can't move forward from here, if they keep themselves chained and locked and unfree, they'll never get to share what they've experienced. The disciples are being sent into the world, and what it means to be sent is to spread the same kind of love Jesus has made known. That love is the freeing force the world needs. If the disciples share it, then other people who haven't known it yet will be able to live more free. They will feel both forgiven and redeemed. They will be released. But if the disciples don't spread the love, a whole lot of people are going to stay just where they are. Without a different model to follow, they're going to stay trapped and not released. If you don't love them as I do, I hear Jesus saying, who will? Who will do it if you don't? How will they know my love exists if you don't go? If the people who have seen or believed, who've tried Jesus out and found him trustworthy, don't go and bear witness to that, then other people will remain stuck in their unbelief and distrust. Their deepest sadness and brokenness will be retained. That's what John says in the original language. Instead, Jesus wants more and more of us to believe, to trust that there is more than what we see, that good exists alongside the bad and the hard, and to know peace so that we can spread this experience of something new and better far and wide, so that this circle of divine love will never end, but only ripple out. And that finally brings us to Thomas, the very last piece of John's account. All these things are together on purpose, I think. The words Jesus says, the kind of conditions that Thomas gives, all of it's packed together because it's part of the same story. Thomas is one who could believe. Thomas is one who could see. He's simply practical. He wants what the others got. He wants just what his friends got to see. I've read that Thomas wasn't doubting Jesus so much as he was doubting his friends and the account they gave. He could see that they really believed it, but maybe he wondered, could anything really be this good? I know we all want Jesus back, but could you possibly have imagined this? Could this be Jesus in ghostly form? Jesus in spirit form? What did you really see? Whatever headspace Thomas has been in for that long week of waiting, and however Thomas presents himself, I'll note that Jesus doesn't seem mad at Thomas at all. Jesus is not judging Thomas. Jesus gives his people what they need to believe, to trust and believe. He wants his inner circle to have all they can to expand that circle. And look, to call out judgments that have been made for a very long time about Thomas, the early church could just as easily have called him confessing Thomas as doubting Thomas. He completely got a raw deal in my mind. Because the very first thing Thomas says after Jesus tells him, come on, Thomas, trust now, time to believe, is my Lord and my God. Right there, Thomas recognizes and names a new way of being that resurrection has moved him into. He's maybe the first one of the disciples to name it, to grab hold of something completely new. My Lord and my God. I believe it. It was a very big thing to be close to Jesus in resurrection season. It was overwhelming and difficult and exhilarating and nerve-wracking. And it definitely called for some active unlearning of all that came before life after death. There were a lot of locked doors on the outside and on the inside that the disciples had to grapple with. Jesus did nothing less than ask his friends to give up all their fears and their freeze, their natural instinct to freeze. He asked them to believe more, to trust more for their sakes and for the whole world. And I kind of think that's the same today. I think of each one of us, locked up in our own different ways, Jesus asks the same. Can you just see me? Can you receive my peace? And can you move beyond what you've already known into what is possible? It's a really big ask, I know. But Jesus wouldn't ask us to trust him if he didn't trust us too. Jesus is trusting us to get it done, to see what habits we formed in hardship that are no longer necessary in freedom, to change ourselves accordingly. When we do, we get to feel a lot more things, and we get to bring a lot more people along. Together, we all can be released. Amen.